Ich möchte herzlich begrüßen und möchte.
Good morning, everybody. Mr. Salafranca has asked that we vote first on the De Keyser report. Can everybody live with that?
Announcement keine.
No announcements.
Bitte sehr.
Yeah, go on.
Κύριε Πρόεδρε,
Chairman, I have taken the floor because I think recently there have been three major events which deserve discussion. Firstly, your statement is completely unacceptable following the visit of the FET delegation to Ukraine. Also unacceptable is the behavior of the AFET delegation in that country. These two facts are completely unacceptable because I believe they're a major intervention in the internal issues in Ukraine. It's unacceptable that you spoke on behalf of AFET on such a serious issue without having been granted the right to do so. I mean, no one has said that you could speak as chairman of AFET on that. And, you know, if you want to speak as a CDU or whatever, that's your business. But basically, you know, in terms of Russia, the EU, there are democratic freedoms, national independence as well, and, you know, the EU and the USA are apparently trying to push Ukraine into competitive organizations which are against their rights, basically.
Señor Presidente.
Thank you, Chairman. I would simply like to say that once we've voted, we can address this issue just raised by our colleague. Unfortunately, the microphone has been switched off. We are meeting as of 9 o'clock this morning. We have a lot to do, so I would ask that we vote first and then we address that issue. Thank you.
Erstens. Der Vorsitzende hat am Montag.
Firstly, the chairman gave a report on this on Monday and that was approved by the committee. Secondly, the chairman always acted in concert with the remainder of the delegation, consulted everything he said and did with the rest of the delegation, and there was cross-party support for everything he said and did. Thirdly, I'm afraid when it's a matter of human rights, those are universal, and there's no question of interference in internal affairs. You may have your old-fashioned ways, and that's your problem. But if there are people who want to come to Europe, they shouldn't be made to go to Russia.
Wir kommen zur Abstimmung und haben dabei den Paragraphen 1.
Right, the vote now. Paragraph 131, those in favour. Against, abstentions rejected. 32 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 33 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 34 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 35 in favour, against, abstentions carried. Compromise 1 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 38.
Wer ist für den Änderungsantrag 38?
38, those in favour, against, abstentions carried.
39:40.
39-40, those in favour, against, abstentions carried. Compromise 2 in favour, against, abstentions carried. And 43 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 44 in favour, against, abstentions, I think rejected, but we'll check that.
Die Abstimmung ist eröffnet.
The vote is open.
Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote is closed.
Mit 27 zu 32 abgelehnt.
That's rejected. 32 against, 27 in favour. Now, which one was that?
44 abgelehnt.
44 then. So compromise 3 in favour, against, abstentions carried. Compromise 4 in favour, against, abstentions carried.
Wir haben jetzt 49.
Next one, is it 49? Yes, 49. Those in favour? Against, abstentions rejected. 50 in favour? Against, abstentions carried. 51, 3 parts. First part, those in favour? Against, abstentions, check.
Das war der erste Teil, ne? Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote is closed. That's rejected. 33 against, 27 in favour. Second part in favour? Against?
Ja, was ist die Frau?
Sorry, I don't have my voting card. Can you count my vote with the socialists? I don't have my voting card. Thank you.
Brauchen wir nicht hier abzustimmen, weil die fallen alle wegen der...
Ja, ich höre gerade auch, da der erste Teil...
The first part was rejected, so the other two parts don't make any sense. So we'll move on to 52. 52, those in favour. Against? Abstentions carried. 53, 54 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 55 in favour. Against, abstentions rejected. 56 in favour. Against, abstentions rejected. 57 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. Compromise 5 in favour. You want to check 57?
57. Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote is closed.
Diesmal war es nicht dieselbe Mehrheit. 35.
So that was carried 35-27.
Kompromiss 5.
Compromise 5 in favour. Against, abstentions rejected.
Wir kommen dann zu... Nein.
What's the next one? No, it isn't. 58. 58. Those in favour. Against?
Compromise 5 was rejected. Compromise was rejected. Now we have to vote about 58. Who is in favor? Is against? Let's check it. It's closed. It was voted with yes, 32 to 29. Then it's...
Dann gehen wir direkt zu 65.
Guck doch mal hier. Hört doch mal zu. What is the number? What was the number which was taken on board?
32 to 32. 32 in favor.
And against?
30.
So it was 32 to 31 now. But it's still voted yes.
Weil die Frau meint, sie darf nicht abstimmen, weil sie keine Karte hat. Und deshalb wird sie jedes Mal...
Ja, das habe ich ja gesagt, aber deswegen müssen wir doch zählen.
Yes, I said that, and that's why we have to count. But I need to know whether it matters or not. You know, it can make a difference between pass or fail. So, 65, those in favour. Against. 65, let's do it again. In favour. Against. Abstentions carried. 68 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 66 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 69 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 70 in favour. Against, abstentions rejected. 71 in favour. Against, abstentions, carried. Compromise 6 in favour. Against, abstentions, carried. 76 next. Amendment 76.
Als neuer Paragraph.
Ja, das machen wir nach diesem jetzt. Wer ist für
76 in favour. Against, abstentions, carried. Now, I've got an oral amendment from Mr. Landsbergis. I shall read it out.
mit einverstanden? Notes that nowhere, including the third countries, torturing in a pre-trial detention facility, even with lethal consequences, as in the Magnitsky case, torturing of political protesters are recently in Ukraine, cannot pass away without proper investigation and punishment.
Yes,
This was a
as the
complete-
torturing of detainees or prisoners by so-called authorities or anybody does present a heavy crime, it cannot be put out of the investigation and punishment. It is very natural, and so it will complete only our position.
Nous avions convenu avec...
Well, we agreed with the shadow rapporteurs that we would look at this very scrupulously and that we wouldn't pick out a particular case, even though that this is very important and it's well justified. All these documents that we have on the table bear out the facts, but this is a general fight against torture in general terms, and that's the only reason why I would oppose that oral amendment from Mr. Landsbergis.
Excuse me, it is exactly general. Nowhere, not only in those particular cases, nowhere, but of course those cases are evident.
Is it possible, if that is true, that we delete the word Magnitsky case?
Could you repeat me the...
That
oral
if we
amendment?
delete the word
Yes,
Magnitsky
but,
case,
Could you repeat? Could you repeat the...
notes that nowhere, including the third countries, torturing in pre-trial detention facilities, even with lethal consequence, torturing of political protesters, as recently in Ukraine, that is Ukraine. Torturing of political protesters cannot pass away without proper investigation and punishment. So it means without Ukraine and without Magnitsky. Also then not. So it's a general thing, not just because Magnitsky is in it. Want to test that. Herr Bütikofer. Frau Lunacek.
And could we, in the future, please have amendments before and not just in the moment of voting?
Mr. Chairman, may I
Verehrte
say,
Frau Vorsitzende Lunacek,
Distinguished Chairman Lunacek, I only received it just now as well. If a colleague decides to put down an oral amendment, they're entitled to do so. And next time you do it, we'll treat you exactly the same way.
Wir versuchen uns an diese...
I'm very sorry, Chairman. We do try to respect this rule and not table amendments when everybody else is already voting.
tragt den Kollegen jederzeit, wenn er eine Abstimmung einbringen.
What we've always done is to say that there is a procedure, members have certain rights. As when somebody opposes, as Mr. Kaiser did, then it falls. The rules are very clear, and I really have to ensure respect for the rules.
a word. If colleagues if colleagues are against the concrete point and even disagree when the concrete points are deleted, then take them out also very concrete point about Guantanamo, and you will be not look as so much biased. Do you want to be biased? Please.
Herr Kollege Landsberg.
Mr. Landsbergis. There are all sorts of things I like and dislike about amendments, but I have to enforce the rules. If colleagues are not prepared to accept the oral amendment, it's over. There's no need to vote. There's no need to continue the discussion.
Was ist denn noch?
So what else is there to say?
Presidente, lo que dice el reglamento no es que si hay un colega en contra. La nueva aplicación de la regla que se proyecta desde el...
The Commission, I think that, well, it's been, the idea was that there would be 4 colleagues. And then secondly, in the committee, Chairman, the members have always had the right to submit oral amendments. And clearly, if there are 4 members against, then that's fine. But I would like you to listen to me, please, Chairman, if you could. The argument being put forward here is that you don't want to mention individual cases. That's why it was raised. But now it's clear that Mr. Landsbergis' case isn't referring to a specific case. I mean, it mentions that, mentioning that expressis verbis. Now, if Mrs. de Keyser doesn't want to accept it, then it must be for other reasons, not because of this specific case. So I'm turning to Mrs. de Keyser now, and I'd like to ask whether she would be ready to accept this oral amendment from Mr. Landsbergis. Thank you very much indeed.
Monsieur le Président, puis-je vous demander de...
Chairman, can we resume the vote, please? This compromise amendment was accepted by all of the shadow rapporteurs, and now that wasn't adopted. I didn't say anything about that, and that concerns Guantanamo as well. It's the Assembly that decides on that, and that is fine. I didn't say anything. But now I think we should have the same decency with regard to this particular issue. I said no to that oral amendment, and now right at the last minute we're rejigging everything, and it's just really not the way we should be working. I am very respectful of the work of everybody else, and I've said no to that.
Jetzt sagen, Sie erlauben auch nicht diesen mündlichen...
So, you do or you do not accept this oral amendment with the deletion?
Jemand nein?
Has anyone said no? Well, nobody said no, so we have to vote.
Gut, dann ist einer dagegen.
Right, somebody's against, and so there's no need to take it any further. I think it's become clear. Thank you, Mr. Gahler.
77, wer ist da?
77, those in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 78 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 79 in favour. Against, abstentions rejected. 81 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 83 in favour, against abstentions carried. 84 in favour, against abstentions carried. 85 in favour, against abstentions carried. 86 in favour, against abstentions carried. 87 in favour, against abstentions carried. 88 in favour, 89 in favour, against abstentions carried. 90 in favour, against abstentions carried. 91 in favour. 90. Check on 90.
Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
Vote is closed. That is carried 43 to 18. Landsbergis and Muniz, that's 44 to 19. 91, those in favour? Against, abstentions rejected.
92 in favour, against abstentions carried. 39 in favour, against abstentions carried. Compromise 7 in favour, against abstentions carried. 95 in favour, against abstentions carried. 96 in favour, against abstentions carried. 98 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 97 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 99, first part in favour, against, abstentions carried. Second part in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 100 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 101 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 102 in favour, against, abstentions. 102 in favour, against. Let's check.
Einmal ja, einmal nein.
One's yes, one no. Vote is closed. (23, 29). It's rejected. 104 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 105 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 106 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 108, first part in favour, against, abstentions rejected. Second part, that's settled. 109 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 110 and 11 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 112 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 113 in favour, against, abstentions carried. Compromise 8 in favour, against, abstentions carried. And this is request 116 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 117 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 120 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 118 in favour, against, abstentions. Let's check. Possibly rejected, but we'll check. Vote is closed. 32 rejected. 119 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 122 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 123 favour, against, abstentions carried. 124 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 126 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 127 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 129 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 128 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 131 in favour, against, abstentions. Check. EPP, you didn't take part in the vote.
Welcher ist ein anderer so? Welcher war das?
Das war der 128. Schießen wir.
Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
Vote is closed.
24 zu 5.
24 to 5. No, 55 to 6. 55, 6. 131 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 132 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 133 and plus oral amendment in favour, against, abstentions carried. 134 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 135 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 136 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 137 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 138 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 139 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 140 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 141 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 142 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 143 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 144 to 147. Can we vote on all of these together? 144 to 1. No? Okay. 144 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 145 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 146 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 147 in favour, against, abstentions carried. Now those who said 99 no. I was looking at you and I've included you, you know, and...
Damit hätten wir meine Verspätung bei...
Well, we'd have made up for my lateness if we'd managed to do that. Never mind. Compromise 9. Those in favour, against, abstentions carried. 151. Compromise 9.
Who is against? The only thing that we have to check is your position. 152 dafür.
152 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 153 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 154 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 155 in favour, against, abstentions check.
Das war 155, ne?
55, genau.
Ja. Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
Vote is closed. 32 to 28 carried. 156 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 155 says the chairman.
Und wurde angenommen und daher kommen wir jetzt zu
157.
157, those in favour, against, abstentions carried. 158 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 159 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 162 in favour.
I have a feeling that we didn't vote for 151. I think we didn't vote for 151. Could you please check it?
One by fund was voted with yes. Twice. Because of the help of Mr. von Orden, it was voted twice with yes.
Okay, I have a feeling that they voted about the compromise, but if I am mistaken, that's fine.
No. 1.5 he called, and it was voted on.
151. I think we bypassed it.
Das sage ich doch die ganze Zeit. We have voted twice about that. And twice with yes. But we can repeat it. Then it gets this article a double star. Wo waren wir jetzt? 162. 162. Wer ist dafür?
162, those in favour, against, abstentions check.
Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
Vote is closed. 28-33 rejected. 163 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 164 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 18 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 19 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 20 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 21 in favour. 20.
Ist geschlossen.
Vote is closed. 32 rejected. 21 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 22 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 23 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 24 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 25 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 26 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 27 in favour, against abstentions carried. 28 in favour, against, rejected. 29 in favour, against abstentions carried. 30 in favour, against abstentions rejected. Citation 1 in favour, against abstentions carried. 2 in favour, against abstentions carried. 3 in favour, against abstentions carried. 4 in favour, against abstentions carried. 5 in favour, against abstentions carried. 6 in favour, against abstentions carried. 7 in favour, against abstentions carried. 8 in favour, against abstentions carried. 9 and 10 in favour, against abstentions carried. 11, 16 in favour, against abstentions carried. 12 in favour, against abstentions check. Vote is closed. 30 to 31 rejected. 13 in favour, against abstentions carried. 14 in favour, against abstentions carried. 15 in favour, against abstentions carried. 17 in favour, against abstentions carried. And that takes us to the opinion. Deve. 1 in favour, against abstentions carried. 2 in favour, against abstentions carried. 3 in favour, against abstentions rejected. 4 in favour, against abstentions carried. 6 in favour, against abstentions carried. 7 in favour, against abstentions carried. Rejected. Rejected. 8. Did we adopt 34? So 34 was adopted, so 8 has to be adapted then. So who is in favour of Deve 8? Against? Abstentions carried. 10 in favour, against, abstentions carried. Did we adopt 138? Yes. Adopted. In that case, 13. Those in favour, against, abstentions carried. David 14 in favour, against, abstentions carried. FEM Committee 1 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 2 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 3 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 47, 64. Well, that takes us to FEM 6. Oh, was I rushing ahead of myself? FEM 4 in that case. Adopted. 6 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 7 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 9 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. Rejected. 11 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 13 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 14 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 16 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 17 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. Was 99 adopted? So 19, those in favour, against, abstentions, check.
On 19.
FEM 19.
Why do you not use your card? You should not take. Use the voting card, not the American press. Ist geschlossen.
The vote is closed. $30.29 carried. Yes, I counted you in. 30.29. Which one was that? Yes, that takes us to FEM 19 in favour, against, abstentions.
Frauen 20.
FEM 20 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. FEM 21 in favour, against, abstentions carried. FEM 22 in favour, against, abstentions carried. And a vote, electronic vote on the draft report as a whole.
Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
Vote is closed. The report is adopted 57 to 1. Congratulations to the rapporteur.
Wir kommen jetzt zum Antrag, zum Bericht.
Which takes us to the Ana Gomes report on Saudi Arabia.
Ja? Gibt es da noch was zu sagen?
Any further comments on this? That's not the case. So, compromise 2. In favour? Against? Abstentions carried. 46 in favour? Against? Abstentions? I think it was adopted, but let's check. This is on 46. Vote is closed. 24:30 rejected. 127 in favour. 127 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 47, first part in favour, against, abstentions carried. Second part in favour, against, abstentions carried.
So, Abstimmung ist eröffnet.
Vote is open.
Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
Vote is closed.
Der Antrag ist mit 28 zu 33 abgelehnt.
27 in favour, 32 against, rejected. 48 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 49 in favour, against, abstentions rejected.
Dafür.
51 in favour, against, abstentions. Check.
Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
Vote is closed. $34 in favour, 28 against, carried. 52 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 53 in favour, against, abstentions. Let's check.
Die Abstimmung ist.
The vote is closed. $34 in favour, 28 against. 54 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 55 in favour, against, abstentions carried. Compromise 4 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 62 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 63 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 64 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 66 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 67 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 68. 67. Always the same majority.
Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote is closed. Rejected. 30-30. Rejected. 68 in favour. Against. Abstentions.
Why?
Aber Landsberg ist dafür.
But Landsberg is for it. It was 29 to 29, now it's 30-30.
Yeah, but she didn't vote, she had no card.
Yeah, I voted on her. It was 29 to 29 by votes. We have two people in the room without a card. Landsbergis and Mrs. Muniz. No, it's 30-30. Yeah. She has not two votes because she has no card. 68 in favor. Against? Abstention? Check. It's closed. This is 35 to 27, yes. 70 dafür.
70 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 69 in favour.
Diesmal haben die Liberalen mit Ja gestimmt.
This time the Liberals voted yes.
Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote is closed. 38-22 carried. 69 in favour. Against, abstentions rejected. 71 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 72 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 73 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. Compromise 5 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 79. We've got an oral amendment on this one. So those in favour of 79, in favour, against, abstentions, check.
I thought you had a compromise on that. Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote is closed.
Der Antrag ist angenommen worden mit 32.
Carried 32 to 30. 82 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 84 in favour. No, 83 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 85 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 82, what happened with that? Was it rejected or carried? Was 82 adopted?
Ja, dann kommen wir zu Kompromiss 7. Nur noch mal eine Frage beantworten. Kompromiss 7 dafür.
Compromise 7, those in favour, against, abstentions carried. Compromise 6 in favour, against, abstentions carried. That takes us to 102. Those in favour, against, abstentions carried. 103 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 106 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 107, first part in favour, against, abstentions carried. Second part, in favour, against, abstentions. I think it was also carried.
Der Antrag,
Vote is closed.
der Antrag wurde mit 29 zu
29 to 32, thereby rejected. 108 in favour. Against? Abstentions carried. Second part. In favour. Against? Abstentions? Check.
Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
Vote is closed. Rejected 29 to 33. 109 in favour. Against? Abstentions? Check.
Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
Vote is closed. Carried 33 to 28. 110 in favour. Against? Abstentions? Check.
Die Abstimmung ist abgeschlossen.
The vote is closed. Carried 32 to 29. 111 in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 112 in favour. Against, abstentions carried.
Die Abstimmung ist eröffnet.
Vote is open. 112. And it's now closed.
No, jetzt schließen wir. Wenn ich nicht abstimmen, kann ich es auch nicht ändern. Der Antrag ist mit
rejected with 28 in favour and 30 against, which takes us to 115 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 113 in favour, against, abstentions, check.
die Abstimmung.
The vote is closed. (28 in favour, 31 against). Rejected. 114 in favour, against, abstentions, check. The vote is closed. 29 in favour, 32 against. Rejected. 116 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 117 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 118 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 121 in favour, against, abstentions, check.
Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
Vote is closed. 28 in favour, 32 against. Rejected. 122 in favour. 122 in favour, against, abstentions, check. Vote is closed. 27 in favour, 34 against. Rejected. 123 in favour, against, abstentions, check.
Die Abstimmung.
The vote is closed. 32 to 28 carried. So now 124 in an abbreviated form in favour, against, abstentions, carried, same majority there. Moving on to compromise 8. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Let's check that, please.
Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote's closed. 32 to 29 carried. 128, 129, those in favour, those against, abstentions, let's check that.
Der Antrag ist.
The vote is closed. 33 to 28 carried.
Dann kommen wir zu.
Moving on to 132, those in favour, those against, abstentions rejected. Compromise 3 in favour, against, abstentions carried. 135, those in favour, against, abstentions rejected. Compromise 9, those in favour, those against, abstentions carried. Moving on to 147, those in favour, against, abstentions carried. 148, those in favour. What should I do?
148.
148, those in favour. Those against, abstentions rejected. Compromise 10, those in favour. Those against, abstentions carried. Compromise 11, those in favour. Against, abstentions carried.
Kompromiss 11.
Compromise 11, let's check that. Compromise 11. Let's have an electronic vote on that.
Die Abstimmung ist.
Vote's closed. The result is that the amendment by 29 to 32 was rejected, in fact. 155 now, those in favour. Those against? 155. Those in favour of 155. Against? Abstentions. Let's check that.
Die Abstimmung ist.
The vote's closed. 29 to 32 was rejected. 156, those in favour. Those against? Abstentions. Let's check that.
Die Abstimmung.
The vote's closed. 29 to 32, same majority there, it was rejected. 157, those in favour. Those against? Abstentions? Let's check that.
Die Abstimmung.
The vote's closed. Same majority again, 29-32. 158, those in favour. Those against? Abstentions? Let's check that.
Die Abstimmung ist.
The vote's closed. 30 to 31 rejected. 159, those in favour. Those against? Abstentions? Let's check that.
Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote's closed. 28 to 33, that was rejected. 160, those in favour. Those against? Abstentions? Let's check that.
Die Abstimmung ist.
The vote's closed. By 27 to 30, that was rejected. 161, those in favour. Those against, abstentions carried. 163, those in favour. Those against, abstentions carried. 164, those in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 164, you mean? 164, let's check.
Die Abstimmung ist.
The vote's closed. In fact, by 29 to 30, that was rejected. 165, those in favour. Those against, abstentions carried. 167, those in favour. Those against, abstentions, let's check that.
Die Abstimmung.
The vote's closed. By 33 to 27, that was carried. Moving on to 2. Those in favour. Those against. Abstentions. Let's check that.
Der Antrag.
The vote's closed. By 31 to 29, that was carried. Amendment 3. Those in favour. Those against. Abstentions carried. 4. Those in favour. Abstentions against. Abstentions carried. 5. Those in favour. Against. Let's check. 5.
Die Abstimmung.
The vote's closed. By 28 to 32, that was rejected. What amendment was that again? That was Amendment 5, was it? Right, 6. Those in favour. Against. Abstentions rejected. 7. Those in favour. Against. Abstentions rejected. 8 in favour. Against. Abstentions. Check that one.
What? Du möchtest das Wort?
Do you want to say something? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Oh, thank you.
Schließen wir. Schließen wir.
Wir schließen nach langem Überlegen.
Well, after lengthy discussions, we're closing that now.
Es hat aber nichts.
But it didn't actually help us out at all because 27 in favour, 33 against. So that means we can move on to 11, those in favour. Those against, abstentions carried. 9, those in favour. What? No. 9, those in favour. Against, abstentions. Let's check that.
Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote's closed. By 28 to 30, that was rejected. 12, those in favour. Those in favour of 12. Or 10. Oh, right, 10. Those in favour of 10. Against. Abstentions. Check.
Eine solche Abstimmung.
We haven't had a kind of vote like this before. It's unprecedented.
Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote's closed. So 28 to 31, that was rejected. Moving on then to 12, those in favour. Those against, abstentions. Let's check that.
Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote's closed. By 28 to 31, that was rejected. Moving on to compromise 1, those in favour. Those against, abstentions carried. 15, amendment 15, those in favour. Against, abstentions carried. 16, those in favour. Against, abstentions, let's check that.
Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote's closed. It's carried. 14, those in favour. Those against, abstentions rejected. 17, those in favour. Those against, abstentions carried. 18, those in favour. Against, abstentions. was carried. Do you want to repeat that? No, fine. Okay, 21, those in favour. Those against? Abstentions? Carried. Check it.
Das ist durchaus.
Yes, that's quite justified, I think. We're talking about 3 votes, making the difference, I think.
Yeah.
The vote's closed. Rejected then. 29 to 30. 22 those in favour. Those against? Abstentions? Check.
Abstimmung ist.
The vote's closed. By 30 to 27, that was carried. 23 those in favour. 23 those in favour. Those against? Abstentions? Let's check that.
Die Abstimmung ist.
Vote's closed. So the result is that, which amendment was that then again? 23. By 29 to 28, no, by 30 to 29 that was carried. 2 people didn't vote electronically, it seems. 3 people didn't. I didn't.
It was Mrs. Muniz, it was Mr. Landsbergis and me. So it is 30 to 29. Was it? And therefore we avoid to vote over the next amendment. We have saved time. 25 voice in favor. 25 in favor. Against? Check. Das Ding funktioniert nicht richtig. 25. The vote is closed. The amendment is carried. 26.
26, those in favour. Those against? Abstentions? Check.
Die Abstimmung.
The vote is closed. The amendment is rejected, 29 to 30. Moving on then to the Sharka amendment, 27. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions carried. 28. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Check.
Das ist.
The vote's closed. The amendment is carried, 33 to 26.
Ja?
Die Frau Gomez. Es gibt so ein Abkommen zwischen EVP.
Ja, das interessiert mich doch gar nicht, wer dann Agreement gemacht hat. 29.
29.
Gomez möchte etwas sagen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to inform that our S&D and EPP groups have come to an agreement that only the first sentence of Amendment 29 will be put to a vote as an addition to the original text of Recital F. So the first sentence reads like this: whereas the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has taken strong action and severe measures to combat terrorism and financial activities linked to terrorism, and we agreed to change the word decisive to strong in this sentence. Thank you.
Wir stimmen so darüber.
So we'll vote on 29 then in the form provided. 29. Those in favour? Those against? That's decided then. Carried. And then 30. Those in favour, against, abstentions carried. 32. Those in favour, against, abstentions, check.
Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
Vote's closed. Carried. 33, the first part, those in favour, against, abstentions carried. Second part, those in favour, those against, check.
Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote's closed. Rejected. 34, those in favour. Sorry?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
34 to 1 in block? No. 34.
34, those in favour. Those against, abstentions? Okay, fine. 35, those in favour.
Only to vote, it's not my problem. 34.
34.
Okay, Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote's closed.
Mit 26.
26 to 28. Rejected. 35. Those in favour. Those against. Abstentions carried. 36. Those in favour. Those against. Abstentions carried. 37 in favour. Against. Abstentions carried. 38 in favour. Against. Abstentions carried. 39 in favour. Against. Abstentions carried. 40. Those in favour. Against. Abstentions carried. No, check it.
Die Abstimmung ist.
The vote's closed.
Wrongly. Der Antrag. One can see that. Dieser Antrag.
This amendment is rejected.
Wir kommen zum.
Moving on to Amendment 1. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Let's check that one.
Nein, der ist angenommen.
Adopted. Let's check anyway.
Das ist geschlossen.
The vote's closed. Carried. Fem 1. Covered. That's covered, that one.
Weil andere Kompromisse angenommen wurde, die hier...
Ja, lass mich doch machen. Ich sage, es ist covered. Ich fange doch an.
Yes, I just said it was covered, so don't stop interrupting me. I've just said it was covered. Mr. Shanako.
Lass mich doch hier oben mal in Ruhe.
Mr. Chairman, there is an oral amendment in the paragraph 8 in order to eliminate the word possible. It means at the end of the
Kann ich das mal
paragraph
haben?
8,
Can I have that amendment?
the phrase is in order to eliminate possible existing discriminatory references to beliefs in other religions or beliefs. We want to eliminate the word possible. Possible.
Wir haben das abgestimmt.
We voted on that, but the rapporteur... Is that okay? Covered?
Dann ist das erledigt.
That takes care of that then, doesn't it? So we can move on to 19.
Ausschuss 19.
Fem 19, those in favour. Those against, abstentions carried. 20, those in favour. Those against, abstentions carried. Fem 25, those in favour. Against, abstentions. Check. Fem 25.
Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote is closed. So the amendment is carried, 31 to 24. The final electronic vote then. The vote is closed. Carried with a large majority, despite everything. So we can move on to the next item on the agenda. Draft opinion. Our colleague, Mr. Mendes del Valle. Electronic vote.
Abstimmung ist eröffnet.
The vote's open. The vote is closed. The report is carried by a large majority. The next point on the agenda, which is the EU-Azerbaijan agreement, electronic vote. The vote's open. Item 6, EU-Azerbaijan.
Facilitation on the insurance of visas, etc. Yeah. Top 6. Has everyone voted? Not yet. It's closed. Carried. Now we come to the EU-Azerbaijan agreement on the readmission of persons residing without authorization. Electronic vote. Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
The vote's closed.
Ist carried. Wir kommen jetzt zum Tagesordnung.
Moving on to item 8.
Ich möchte herzlich unseren
I would like to warmly welcome our Armenian friends, the members of the EU-Armenia Parliamentary Cooperation Committee, which is currently holding its 14th meeting.
Wir wissen, dass das
We know that the association agreement that was negotiated for well-known reasons was not signed by Armenia, and that the Armenians have said that they intend to sign the customs union agreement. This didn't bode well for the relationship between the EU and Armenia. Nonetheless, we've got to be pragmatic and continue our relations with that country.
im Rahmen, could it be stop the discussions? Could you stop the discussions? Could you stop the discussions upstairs there? Ich glaube, dass wir dennoch die Beziehungen
I think we've still got to further our relationship with that country with regard to the Eastern Partnership, of course. And what we have to do is to work out to what extent we are going to enhance our relationship. And I'm very pleased to welcome our colleagues from that committee and hear from them to what extent they've already contributed to this objective here in Strasbourg, but also, of course, we've got the Mr. Karbanov, the co-chair, and the Armenian co-chair, Mr. Farmanian, and I'd like to ask Mr. Karbanov to update us on the work in progress. Thank you very much, Chairman, Mr. Brock. I would like to thank you very much for making time for us today and giving us the opportunity to meet with you this morning and cooperate with you to tell you about the PCC between the EU and Armenia. I would like to speak Czech, if you don't mind.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me together with you to express my pleasure at this opportunity to meet our friends and colleagues, members of the Parliament of Armenia. On the margins of our 14th EU-Armenia Parliamentary Cooperation Committee meeting yesterday and today in Strasbourg, I'd like to welcome all our colleagues, starting with Mr. Sambel Farmanyan, the head of the Armenian delegation. We have been discussing common issues. Our meeting yesterday and today has been exceptional. For the past 4 years, we have been following Armenia's preparations for signing the association agreement. And as you know, a few weeks before this document was to be signed, there was a sudden change in Armenian foreign policy, and Armenia announced its accession to the Customs Union with a view to future membership of the Euro-Asian Union. The new situation gave rise to yesterday's discussions, and I'm sure that Armenian members will now take the opportunity to explain to members of the European Parliament Foreign Affairs Committee what Armenia's future foreign policy is going to look like. I'd like the door for Armenia to the European Union to remain open, and I think all of us together, following this turnaround in Armenian foreign policy, need to discuss future developments.
I'd like, first of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity to meet you and distinguished members of the Foreign Committee of the European Parliament. As you know, we are here for the 14th PCC meeting. And we discussed yesterday topics relating to the agenda of Armenia-EU relations successfully, and we'll continue our job after this meeting. Dear colleagues, as you know, Armenia has always affirmed that shares common values with Europe. And Armenia is a part of Europe, historically, culturally is a part of Europe, and relations with the European Union remains to be one of the priorities of Armenia's foreign policy. We do understand that there could be different interpretations of the last developments regarding Armenia-EU relations, and that different phrasings could be used. But the fact is that Armenia, there is no change in the foreign policy of Armenia. In terms of that, Armenia has always said that it has unique relations with the Russian Federation, which is a strategic partner of Armenia. Armenia is a member of CSTO, a security organization together with Russia. Armenia has its own vulnerabilities that any authority cannot escape taking all these factors into account. At the same time, Armenia stands ready, and the President of Armenia has reaffirmed it several times, including after the September of last year, that we stand ready to deepen our relations with the European Union and to have more comprehensive relations with the EU. We value our cooperation with the European Union, and it had been very helpful for moving forward the reform agenda in Armenia and strengthening our democratic institutions. And as a colleague of mine, Mr. Zabornok, noted, we are very thankful to the European institutions that there is a common understanding of this need to go further and to see, trying to outline what are the areas and what is the scope that we can cooperate with the European Union in the future. Many people in Armenia believe that this was a kind of challenge as talking about the association agreement, and it is not a secret that there are lots of people who stand in Armenia for even more and even deeper relations with the EU, and there are people in Armenia who think that Armenia should give priority to its security vulnerabilities and cannot escape these factors to take into account. But the fact is that we don't want and we never want to contradict these two integration processes. And we are sure that a due framework could be found in the future, and we are here to discuss with our European Parliament colleagues as well at the PCC what this due framework could be in the future. What basis should we find to have Armenia-EU relations to go deeper in the future? And I am very hopeful, that we can find that framework. We should keep patience a bit. We should find a due framework and continue our cooperation, because it is quite evident that cooperation with the European Union in the mind of the general public in Armenia also goes hand in hand with the reform agenda, which is vital for Armenia's future success. So that there is no choice for Armenia rather than to build a strong modern state based on democratic institutions, rule of law, human rights, independent judiciary, so that in this context our cooperation with the EU remains a top priority for us, and the authorities of Armenia, the government, is ready to discuss openly in a frank manner what could be a due framework to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair. And now let me to open floor for discussion. As I understand it, well, we have 15, 20 minutes. So Mr. Pashknian is asking for, and Mr. Marukian is asking for the floor, Mr. Pogosyan as well, and Madam Lunacek. So as I may manage it, then Mr. Pashknian, and then Lunacek, and then next one. Yeah? Thank you very much. And sure. Thank you, Madam Gomez.
Thank you very much. If you don't mind, I will speak in Armenian, if we have such opportunity. Do we have? Yes, thank you. Տիկնակ եւ պարոնայք, անդրադառնալով Հայաստանի եվրաինտեգրման վերջին ձախողումների մասին.
The analysis of Armenia's recent failures on the way to European integration, I believe one should stress the following. Lots being said about Armenia stepping back from initialing the package as the country succumbed to Russia's pressure. This is really surprising because it does not correspond to reality, and it's quite obvious that Russia would have not exerted any pressure on Armenia for the country not to sign. A question arises as to what was the plan for the authorities to withstand this pressure and not to succumb to this? And Armenian authorities, have they explained to their European interlocutors as to how they're going to cope with the pressure, especially when it comes to the fuel and gas prices? has there been any explanation provided as by the European Party as to how Armenia is going to cope? Has it ever been on the agenda? Because I have to admit that my impression is that it was never on the negotiations table, which comes as a surprise. Another question is whether there were any conditions that would enable Armenia's association at this particular point in time. I think such conditions, if there were any, should have warranted some discussion for us to engage in successful European association. The first of such conditions would be to have legitimate authorities in Armenia. Let's admit and let's confess that the EU, both in 2008 and in 2013, turned a blind eye on certain irregularities in relation to Armenia's elections, hoping that turning such a blind eye will facilitate Armenia's integration agenda, and such a policy seemed to be successful until mid-2013, and then we saw what happened, and we're back to square zero. The second condition has to do with definition or identification of guarantees for peaceful settlement of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Safeguards and conditions whereby within European integration context, Azerbaijan would never engage in any belligerent action, because they're the only interested party as far as such belligerent action is concerned. And one of such guarantees could be a commitment whereby, should Azerbaijan try to resolve the issue by force, the EU would recognize Karabakh's independence. The third condition has to do with opening Armenia's borders with Turkey without any preconditions, and we cannot really say that the EU exhausted all possible avenues as far as this is concerned. And the fourth condition could be diversification of energy sources for Armenia, because we're bordering with Iran, the second biggest source of energy, but we happen to be receiving gas from Russia, and we don't have any shared border with Russia. It has to do with Russia's position. They don't want Armenia to diversify our sources. It also has to do with the position of the United States and Europe, that due to certain considerations exerted some pressure on Armenia not to engage in close cooperation with Iran as far as energy supply is concerned. And this most recent developments in Iran instill hope that American and European positions vis-à-vis our cooperation with Iran will eventually change. And sometimes in my interactions with my European colleagues, I say that, however ridiculous this may seem, Armenia's course towards European integration passes via Iran. And in addition to the four conditions or factors I have just mentioned, when it comes to our new agenda, we should probably seriously ponder over the fact that without having addressed these four considerations, our future discourse will eventually gravitate to square zero again. Thank you.
Minutes, it's on us how we will use it, if one or two of us will use it, or if we will share the time together. Ulrika Lunacek, then Mr. Marukian, then Madame Gomez.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll try to be short. I mean, as all of us, I think, we're all very, let's say it not so bluntly, rather astonished with the fact that the Armenian president, from one day to the next, just decided to stop negotiations. What was already negotiated, what was already finalized, and just from one day to the next say, let's join the customs union. Now, I'm hearing what you're saying, colleague Farmanyan, and I also read what President Sargsyan said in a Czech newspaper just recently, that He says that Armenia will be striving to fulfill the goals set by the Vilnius Declaration, etc. But simply speaking, I have problems believing your words now, yeah? Because you're saying, yes, you want to have a good relationship both with the European Union and with Russia. I wish it were the case, but what we have seen was a decision you took, or your president took, without any consultation with the parliament, without any consultation with the public, with civil society, with anybody. And this was something that for us here was simply, I would say, from my point of view, from my party's point of view, unacceptable. I mean, how would you, and that was, let's put it that way, if we compare now what's going on in the Ukraine, their President Yanukovych just suspended the preparation for signing it. Your president simply said no to it and stopped it and went to the other side. So I have a bit of problem believing how can we consider Armenia, how can we as European Union consider Armenia really to be a reliable partner? Yeah? We negotiate for 3 years, yeah? It's finalized. And then suddenly, on the eve of the Vilnius summit, even that, yeah, that even makes it, I think, even worse. So I don't know, what kind of guarantees can you give us that you really want to go on the European path? And let me connect with that the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. I think as long as the solution of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and the relevant is not done, and the relevant Armenian security is in the hands of the Russian Federation, the sovereignty of your country is undermined, and the basic choices of Armenia cannot be decided in a democratic and transparent way. And one third point, there have been protests against the decision of the president in Armenia, and in Yerevan it was in December, and about 110 anti-government protesters were, several of them were detained, mostly young ones who protested against this decision of the president, and they clashed with scores of riot police, and some are now receiving written notices informing them that the police have asked Armenia's administrative court to fine them 50,000 drams, it's around €100, because they violated a law on public gatherings. I mean, how can you explain that a couple of, I don't know, 100 people or so who protest against the decision is dealt with in that way by your police and your government? I think, I mean, if you say you're a democratic country, you want the rule of law, you just explained that to us. How can you defend such an action? Thank you.
Thank you, Ulrika. Let's give a note to Mr. Co-Chairman. Then on the list, Mr. And Mr. Vardanyan.
Thanks. But, I totally agree with Madame Lunacek that there is a common misunderstanding in between us, and it came after the September's decision of Armenia. But I would also add that this misunderstanding also could be interpreted as a mutual misunderstanding. I mean, it's not only the people in European institutions having questions about Armenia's decision and Armenia's choice, but also people in Armenia trying to understand why it could not be compatible to have political deep association and deep relations with the European Union while being a member of the customs union. So it is I'm not talking about the DCFTA. Secondly, as to the right of the president to make such a decision, Armenia is governed by its constitution, and the constitution of Armenia clearly says that the foreign policy of Armenia is being run by the president of the country, and basically these kind of decisions are made by the president. And as to the relations between our different institutions, including the Parliament of Armenia, of course the Parliament will get engaged to discuss, to debate, and to consider all the documentation which form the basis of Armenia's decision to join the customs union. So Madame Lunacek, of course, will come to that stage, and the Parliament, of course, will be engaged and will debate all these decisions. And what about your wording of not believing in our words? It's pity to hear that, but we are trying to understand you. but the facts speak sometimes louder than our words do. The fact is that Armenia has never excluded its membership to the customs union. It doesn't matter me, you or our colleagues like it or not, but the Armenian political leadership had never excluded such scenario in different interviews, in different political statements. That's the first. And secondly, Armenia has always voiced that Armenia has unique strategic relations with the Russian Federation, and this is important for Armenia from the point of view security, from the point of view economy and other fields. And Armenia is not going to contradict its relations with Russia to its relations with another important partner like the EU or the others. So this is also very clear for anyone following political developments in Armenia. As to Armenia's security options and the problem of Nagorno-Karabakh, yes, I totally agree with a colleague of mine representing the opposition of Armenian parliament, Mr. Pashinyan, that the Nagorno-Karabakh problem remains a problem hindering many developments, both in Armenia and first of all for the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, which are striving simply for their independence to be recognized internationally since they have the right to live in a peace environment and to develop their own society and economy. But unfortunately, as to the Nagorno-Karabakh, we have the situation that Azerbaijan, unfortunately, has a destructive approach towards the negotiation processes, and just the recent developments on the line of contact with Azerbaijan and Nagorno-Karabakh and the loss of lives are just one more proof. We do remember, and we thank you very much, when the Ramil Safarov case was debated here in the European Parliament, and we are very thankful for your unequivocal stance. This is very important to have a clear message to official Baku that there could be no other option rather than peaceful negotiations and a peaceful solution to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Because it is quite evident for anyone everywhere that it is Azerbaijan that is threatening with war. It is Azerbaijan that is rejecting the proposals of the only legitimate I mean the co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk countries, recommendations and suggestions coming from them. So as to democratic, I'm finishing, as to democratic commitment of Armenia, Madame Lunacek mentioned the anti-governmental protests. I would say that this is quite normal in the case of Armenia. I mean that the people who have different views are protesting, so that it's quite normal. And Armenia is deeply committed to its democratic development in the future. And again, we give a strong, big value to our cooperation with EU in this regard, because we have gained much, especially in the recent years, in terms of our democratic development with cooperation with the EU. And I believe everyone in Armenia has a right to think however he or she wants on any topic, to protest or to voice his or her opinion about that, and that is quite normal, like in any other country. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. Now let me skip, because I see that Madame Gomez must attend another meeting to give the floor. The ladies first, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the presence of our colleagues from the Armenian Parliament here with us. I just would like to say how shocked I was. I second what my colleague Lunacek has said when we heard about the decision of the Armenian president, because I don't think that the EU, as ever, definitely not this Parliament, had this exclusivist approach, one that the EU partnership agreement would mean exclusion of the obvious strong relation that Armenia has with Russia. And therefore, whatever Armenia would decide to go in some kind of understanding with Russia, namely the customs union, should not be in conflict with the kind of agreement that the EU is doing. It's a sovereign decision of Armenia. But sorry, but who actually conveyed the idea that there was this either or was the decision of the Armenian president to actually say, and not even suspend, but actually declare, close the negotiations with the EU. So sorry, it was the Armenian side who actually conveyed that notion, as it was the Armenian side who made the option to, for instance, to not diversify the relations with other suppliers of oil, apart from Russia, namely Iran. Okay, you could have all sorts of pressures, we all have pressures, but then we ultimately do whatever is necessary. And this the approach is indeed that makes sense is to diversify, you diversify. And indeed I hope that indeed the new developments with Iran will indeed lead to a reconsideration of the Iranian approach there, because I understand that is very important for the independence of and the sovereignty of Armenia to indeed diversify the sources of supply of the basic good like oil and gas. Now, I do also want to share what my colleague Lunacek has said about our shock as well at the way people who protested were treated. Yes, as you said, it is normal that they protest, and it's healthy. It's good that this happens in Armenia, in Yerevan. But what is not normal in a country that wants to go into the kind of commitments that the agreement with the EU also implied in terms of democracy and human rights is actually that the protesters will be fined and repressed and discouraged from protesting. That is not normal in a democracy. And let me just regarding the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, and I'm a person very critical about Azerbaijan. I cannot be discounted as a pro-Azerbaijani member of this parliament. But I don't think that Armenia did itself a favor in what concerns the solution for Nagorno-Karabakh with that decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear Mr. Chairman, dear co-chairmen, distinguished colleagues, I would like to...
Yes. From
Armenian civil society, working as a human rights defender for 10 years. Now I'm in the parliament as an independent member. So last week I met with the EAP civil society platform, our friends. So I would like to raise here their voices that they were, shocked also. And they hope that the European Union will still keep the door open for Armenia's civil society and for Armenia at all. And in this difficult time, leaving Armenia alone, you will push us deeper and deeper back to the not democratic way. So I'm not so naive to think that in the customs union or later in the Eurasian Union, Armenia will be able to spread democracy. Moreover, I tend to think that the limiting practices of those member states may also penetrate to Armenia. But one thing is obvious, that with your help we should keep what is already accomplished and try to move forward. Nevertheless, I should also state that Armenia is an island of democracy with all its problems. It is an island of democracy among the member states of the customs union, and the decline or regression of these developments, which Armenia achieved thanks to its Western partners, must not be allowed. So, concluding my speech, I have very little time. I am once again calling for continuing the support of the European Union in the fields of human rights and freedoms, democracy, rule of law, good governance, fight against corruption and civil society development, keeping doors open for cooperation between EU and Armenia, and further deepening of our relations will guarantee future development of Armenia and the region in general. This approach will save us time and efforts and prepare the country for the possible change of situation in terms of Armenia's EU association. I believe this time will come, since I see Armenia's future only in the European Union, and many of my colleagues think like that. So it's not that we all are happy with this decision. It's not that we all are satisfied with this decision. And especially I think that going to the customs union, joining to the Eurasian Union, Armenia is going backward. And we have to work together. We have to continue our cooperation in order to keeping the door, in order to future opportunities to come back home, Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now on my list, Mr. Fogosyan and then Mr. Vardanyan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, I think we are really in a committee who is dealing with the foreign relations, and that's why any decision taken on that field is a bit strange for me when people saying strange. It's shocked, it's strange, but all over it should be understood what was the interest that it took place. And I think as an expert in the foreign relations, as a people who are dealing with the foreign relations, we need to many times ask the question, Armenia has its real interest on the European integration, and that interest didn't start just 3 years ago. By choosing and becoming member of Council of Europe back in 2001, Armenia started its way towards Europe. Real. Changing its own legislative institutions, moving toward that side. I believe in the power of institutions, I believe in socialization, and that's why little by little, step by step, all our legislation would be fully European, and it will move on that side. If we will keep up, and we can keep up with the institutions back in our country. It's civil society, and it's younger generation that is growing up. Despite on the old problems that state creates for the gatherings, we every day has a protest in various places. Despite of the many issues and laws that is not really properly done, there is a real emotion and there is real idea to fight for their own rights. Society is really changing, and that's why society will be moving on this regard. But at least for me, the most important idea, and that I would like to leave here in this committee as a topics for further discussions, who would be really divining future ideas towards relation with Armenia, to think out of the interest. Yes, it was in the real interest of the EU also that Armenia will move towards that side. Armenia done its past, but out of the institution of the interest, it's a turn into the very big fight of geopolitical interest, where Russia put the pressure on Armenia, not because of Armenia. Armenia is a small, and as my colleagues mentioned, have its own unique relationship with Russia. It's because of Ukraine, because of Moldova, because of Georgia, and sorry, Armenia became the trading coin for many of them. Immediately after Armenian decision, EU make a decision that any Moldovan wine can go to EU without limitation of the standards. And we know that the EU is about standards. But we forget about this. This is a political decision. Now the Ukraine is giving its own fight, and we everyone looking on this and trying to understand. I think we need to keep up with all these institutions and understand that this interest should be respected, understood, supported, because it's not the governments who finally there for the European integration. It's the society and country. We need to support society and country, not the particular government. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vardanen, just 1 minute, please, and then Mr. Brok will close our meeting.
Thank you for this opportunity. I come to reaffirm that we were taken by surprise as well by this 3rd of September decision. But what happened, happened. And I believe that it's been a very appropriate position that the EU demonstrated to keep the door open, that is. I think that a lot will change, tides will come and go, but I still believe that there is a core issue that we should all be looking at. Can Armenia in the future change arrangements whereby decisions are taken single-handedly, like it happened on the 3rd of September. And an answer to this question will probably determine the logic of our future and the breadth and the depth of our interaction with Europe. Our goal should be to build Armenia capable of taking decisions that emanate in a sovereign fashion from the will of the nation, something that did not happen on the 3rd of September. And this is what makes EU's support even more important, to make Armenia more democratic, to make our governance system more sound, more capable of mobilizing the nation and taking decisions in this very nation's interests. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity that we had this discussion here. Ich freue mich, dass wir diese Diskussion hier so durchführen konnten.
I'm delighted that we've had this discussion and that we've had this insight into the intricacies of internal developments. As I said in my introductory remarks, we should maintain our relationship, and despite this dramatic turnaround, we should seek to continue our relationship. We have the existing agreement. We'll have to see if Azerbaijan takes up a higher level of interaction, and then we could see if Armenia and Azerbaijan could be on the same footing, and I'm not being sarcastic here. It's all about whether countries want to look to Europe and have a European-style political system. But I fear that we're not going to make a difference unless a compromise is achieved between Armenia and Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh. Russia has leverage as a result of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, and both countries, Armenia and Azerbaijan, need to see that until that conflict is resolved, they will always be facing pressure from third countries and won't be able to act independently in line with their own will.
Vielleicht wieder das Mikrofon geben.
I can fully understand that Armenia has taken a decision on the basis of the pressure exerted upon it. However, that pressure fails to take into account the independence of the country. Ukraine was pressured using energy prices and economic levers, and in Armenia's case, Armenia needs weapons and military protection. Russia gives weapons to Armenia, and it sells weapons to Azerbaijan. And that way Russia is able to keep this exciting game going. I hope that in Armenia and Azerbaijan there'll be a growing realization that the current situation is the worst and most expensive scenario for both Armenia and Azerbaijan. A compromise on Nagorno-Karabakh is absolutely vital for both countries. I am familiar with the historical reasons, the ideological reasons. I know how painful and how emotional this is for both sides. We've had this in Europe too, up until 1945. The European ideal was born out of a desire to bury old international and ideological conflicts. It was to turn a new page. We were lucky to have the statesmen we had in Germany, France and other countries in 1945 who made it all possible. A great deal of mediation can be done. I think the European Union could do more than it has. It shouldn't just be left to the French. But at the end of the day, it will be your decision and the decision of the people of Azerbaijan. You have to realize that this is the most expensive, the worst scenario. I'm familiar with your difficult economic conditions, and I see the state of your economy, and I see the scale of the military that you need to maintain. The costs to maintain your security are so high, and I think that's something that everybody needs to see and think about. And looking at the territorial aspects for Azerbaijan, I can imagine them wanting to take a step. A conflict can only be resolved if neither side waits for the other. You can't say the other has to make the first move. I hear the same excuses from both sides. That makes me suspicious. I think it's wrong. Both must make the first move simultaneously. Then it becomes possible. And I think the pressure your country is under is possibly something that could give you the impetus to make a change. And we would certainly support your country's effort to achieve complete freedom. We hope you enjoy your stay here.
May I say something? Distinguished Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you, Chairman Brok, for this opportunity to exchange views on this at this important stage in our relations. And again, we are very thankful to our colleagues from the European Parliament, clearly voicing the need to go further. This is very important. And to be just very brief about Armenia and Azerbaijan putting in the same basket regarding relations with the EU and regarding democratic developments, it is, Mr. Brok, Armenia, which is more than interested to be surrounded by democratically governed countries, so that it would be in our best interest if we see democratic breakthrough in Azerbaijan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trinity, but I have not a feeling that my statement was really understood.
Yes. Yes. Yes, yes. Never-ending story.